Hello, I'm Li Hao. Today we're going to talk about how you can communicate through the context. In the previous videos, we talked about how we can use context to sort of pass the data to all your descendants, all your children's, all your grandchildren's components. And today in this video, we're going to talk about more in-depth about how to use context to communicate between the ancestor, the parents, and all its descendants. Right? So today we're going to focus on two directions of the communication. First is how you can send data from the parents to all its descendants. And of course, we're going to talk about how you can, from all its children and descendants, send data or update the parent. Right? So we focus on two ways. Of course, the first way, from parent to all its descendant, we kind of have seen how we can do that in the last video when we talk about context. But there are some more things I want to add on. So let's take a look at this example over here. Let me adjust my mic. So in this example, we have an app component. And within the app component, we have a parent component which shows two children component, child 1 and child 2. In terms of code, they are pretty much the same. It's just that, just want to create more children over here. I could have, actually on the hindsight, I could have just used the same component, and that does not matter actually. Nonetheless, just leave it here. Nonetheless, what we can see over here is we want to pass the color which is red. We set context over here. We pass down the color from the app, and you see that we don't pass it through the parent, so the parent does not know about the color at all. It does not pass like from children to all its grandchildren, but rather we set this context in app.svelte, and all its descendants, for example in child 1 and 2, we can actually get the color by calling get context. Over here we can get the color and now we can see that the color is red, so you see the red color, right? So all this set context and get context is called during the component initialization. Let me reiterate. Is set context and get context is being called in the component initialization, meaning once this is initialized, you call this set color right now. You basically set this color to context, right? Later on, if you change it anymore, it does not matter, right? You only call this function once this is a variable and you pass in a value. So you pass by value because it's a string, it's passed by value. This value is already in the context. There's no way they can change this value anymore. Unless it's an object, you can't change the object, but you can change its property, right? And over here, the same thing as well in the child. Once it is being initialized, where this function get context is called, you read this value out from the context, you have this color, and that's it. You can't do anything. You can't. Basically, this is done, right? You read this value. Anything change in the context somehow by whatever means, it does not matter anymore because you read this value during initialization, and that's it. Right? You don't call this function anymore, right? If this color is a value, it's like a string, number, or boolean, then that's it. If it's an object, the object reference does not change anymore, but the property could have changed. You could have maybe set timeout or interval to constantly read the value and see whether it's changed, right? It could change because you can mutate an object property value. So, and that's what we are going to do actually, because right here I have an input called which is a type of color, which is a color picker, and I want and bind it to a variable called color. So I want to change the color. I change the color, but it does not reflect over here, right? So there's two reasons. First is this set context is called once, and that's all, right? So if you try to change the color, it does not matter to this anymore. So one way I can do is probably I would say two ways. One is maybe pass in an object. So I'm gonna say create an object called color object, and the value of the color object is called color. I'm gonna say red over here. Right, so I pass this object down, and when I bind, I actually use color object dot color. Right, so when I actually change the color object the color. Okay, I need to change this as well. So you see that this is changing on real time. And the children, I can read out, and this is an object, right? So what it means is that I'm gonna say color, this get context returns me an object, and I can get the color from color object dot color. Right, this gives me the color. So I can change. Still, it does not reflect, but in the parents, I have a checkbox that I can show and hide component. If I unhide and I show again, now you see these values updates. It does not update actually, because you hide it, you destroy the component, and when you show, you actually recreate a new one. And during a new component, when it initializes, it reads from the context, and you realize that okay, this object value, okay, child one, this object value, the property, the object itself, the reference of the object itself is still the same, but then the property value is different. Right now, you read a different value from this property, and that's why you see a different color. Actually, I'm gonna remove this file because I'm gonna change one for now. So but hope you get this idea, right? So you can change the object, and now you get it updated. But what if I want to change this color, and I wanna see I want to see the color change on real time as well. Well, there's a few ways you can do. One is in the future videos, you'll probably see this. I'm gonna talk about store, and you can actually pass a store over the context, and you can have a reactive context via the store. Right? Without learning about that, we can create like a simplified version of it, which is I can say, let me think. Okay. I can create another function. In this object, it's not just about the color itself. I can also have my own methods, which is, say, I'm gonna have this listener kind of mechanism where all my children can register itself to listen to it. So that, okay, so we're gonna add listen. Let's say listen to color change. Right, so they can listen to it, and when the color change, so that they can notify it and read the latest value out of it. Right, so I'm gonna pass in a function, and here I'm gonna maybe keep a list of all the listeners. So I'm gonna create a set, new set. This set is gonna call color listeners. So I can come over here and add the function in. And every time when I change the color, right? Every time when I change, I probably will have to notify them. So I can come over here and say color object dot color. So this is a reactive statement. Every time this color object has changed, I would have to execute this statement. So this statement, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a color listeners dot for each listener, and maybe I'm gonna just call this with the new color. Right, this is a, so I'm gonna loop through the listeners and call each of the function with the latest color, right, whenever the color change. So this is a reactive statement, and when does it execute, re-evaluated? It will be re-evaluated by when all of these variables has changed, right? So what are the variables over here? Color listeners is 1. Color object is 1. Listener is not, because you create a listener over here, and that's all, right? So color listeners has changed, or color object has changed. We will re-evaluate this statement. But because over here we only call add method, so add method does not cause add method is neither like assignments or updates expression. So basically this statement over here will not trigger a re-render or re-evaluate this statement, right? But that is okay. That is what we want actually as well. So let's once we implement this listen color change, gonna come over here and say I'm gonna say so color object has another method, right? At listen to color change, and this can pass in a function, and the function itself returns us a new color, right? New color. So what we can do with this is probably we can set color as let. So color equals to new color. Let's see. Oh, this is color object. So as you can see now, if I change my color, you can see the color has changed over here as well, right? Because every time we change the color, it will call the listener, and you can get notified when the new color is changed, and we update the color states within this child1 component, right? So when you pass data down, it's only set up during the initialization, right? So the value that you pass in will be there during initialization, when it will be set during initialization when you call set context, right? So if you pass a string, primitives like string, numbers, booleans, then they will be it. You can't change it at all. But if you pass in a more complex objects like objects or arrays, then you can still mutate them, although you can't change your reference in the context anymore, but you can still mutate them, right? And then during on the other hand, get context will be called during initialization. So if you destroy and recreate, you will call this function again. So if you pass in objects during from the context, then if you mutate the object when you reinitialize the object component again, you probably read the latest value of the object, right? But you still read the same object reference, right? That you can't change that anymore. So if you want to so-called reactively updating the context value and get it updated from the child, then you probably have to set some sort of a pub sub mechanism where you have a publisher of changes and listeners, subscribers or listeners to subscribe to the changes, right? Over here, we kind of manually implement this, and there's a lot of things that we didn't handle. For example, we didn't actually do a cleanup. So this listener, we only listen a function and we didn't clean up, right? If we hide and hide a few times, actually create a multiple of child1's functions over here, and we actually didn't, which are added to this set, and we didn't really remove them at all. And this causes some issues like memory leaks, which can be easily handled if we are using store, which will be covered in future videos, right? Stay tuned for that. So we've seen how we can use get context, set context to pass data from the parents to the child. Right now, we're gonna take a look at a different direction from children, all the grandchildren and children from descendants, to send data all the way to the parents. And usually, when you want to send data from a child to parents, in a normal way, what you do is you use a callback, or you event listeners or callback functions. Right, that is how you pass data up. If the parents want to know something from you, want to pull something from you, maybe they can use like a binding to bind one of your props to a variable, to the parents variable, so that you can read, so that you can update this parents states from the props, from your props. But the other way, where you want to actively pushing data from the children to any children to parents, usually you take in a function where, of course, you still have to get the parents to pass in a function, but then you can call this function anytime you want to notify the parents that, hey, I have something has changed. So this is what I did for the count. So in child1, I have a button which I use a component event and also about forwarding events. When you don't know about forwarding events from components, probably you can watch my previous videos. So links in the descriptions as well. So this is to forward the event. I forward a click event to the parents, and parents forwards click event to its parent, which is the app, which listens to this event and registers these events to on click. So every time when click happens, I'll increment the count. So when I click any of this button, it will increment the count. So this is a lot of things to set up, right? Child have to dispatch a component events to the parents. Parents to listen to it and dispatch, and to the app. App has to do it, has to register it. Right? If you add a few more layers to the parents, each of them have to kind of forward the events upwards, which is a bit tedious. It's not like it's a bad idea. Maybe you want it that way. There is reasons when you want to do a component event forwarding, but in this case we actually don't want it. In this case, we want a very simple setup where I want all my children to tell me if they want to click something, right? So what I can do is I can set up a context as well. I can set up a context called click, and I can pass in this on click function over here, right? So what this means is that any children within me can read this function called on click via this context called click, and they can call this function anytime they want. So with that, I'm gonna come over here in the child, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna come over here and get that function, right? So on click get context click, and I pass this function to my on click. Okay, and now I can actually remove the parents component for event forwarding. Can also remove the event listeners from over here, and let's take a look at what we have, right? So we get the click function for a context and we call it, right? And lo and behold, it still works, right? Now you don't have to care about how many layers in between. All the children or grandchildren, all your descendants can actually read these functions that you want to call back and call them at any time they want. And you can actually pass data up if you want to, right? So for example, if over here I say on click, I can, if I say I want a maybe like a delta, and so that I can increment my counts by a certain delta, right? I can increment by 1, increment by 2, or any numbers, right? Then I can come over here and do that if I want to, right? So this is click me plus 1, and I can have a button called click me plus 2, which increment by 2. And you see, if I click the number 1, I increment by 1. Click number for 2, increment by 2, right? I can pass any kind of data up. This is now all your children will be like your publisher of events, and the app can now change roles to become like a subscriber of events. Say, I want to subscribe this function called click. Anyone can just call this and notify me something has changed, right? Any of my children can let me know when something has changed. This is the function to call, right? I have set this context, just read it. And by design of context, what's so amazing is that your child 1 can be in different parents, right? It could be under this app.svelte, it could be maybe under app2.svelte, as long as they provide this function called click, this context called click, but have a different implementation of it. It does not really matter for child 1, right? Where you are if you're under, okay, which component you're under, then you will call which context you're under with, then you'll call which function that context is set to, right? So that's all for today. So we have learned about how we can communicate from parents to children via context, where you see a parents to children by how we pass data down, and we also see how we can pass data from a child all the way to the parent, right? So if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. And please remember to click like if you like this video. Just spam the like buttons and subscribe if you haven't so that you get notified when the next one is out. So see ya. Bye bye.